A fresh controversy is brewing over Nigeria's 2027 political landscape after the Christian Association of Nigeria, CAN, broke its silence on a controversial statement attributed to Islamic cleric Sheikh Jingir'S concerning the Muslim presidential ticket. The remarks have already triggered strong reactions across religious and political circles, and now CAN is calling for moderation, restraint, and greater responsibility when religious and political leaders speak in public. So what exactly did Yahaya say? Why has the statement generated such a strong reaction? And what does CAN's response tell us about the increasingly sensitive religious politics surrounding Nigeria's 2027 election? Sheikh Yahaya was recently seen in a video circulating on social media addressing Muslims about the Muslim ticket. In the video, the cleric reportedly said that those who do not accept a Muslim ticket should leave Nigeria, arguing that the country belongs to Muslims.
Muslim ba mai rabon jini sai ya ce sun fi yawa da aka buga Allah ya taimake mu muka kwantara su da ƙasa su zo na biyu ma ba su zo ba ko sun zo sai na uku bayan murɗiya su.
The statement immediately generated criticism, particularly among Christians who view the comment as exclusionary and provocative. The controversy has now reached one of Nigeria's most prominent Christian organizations. Joseph Hayab, chairman of CAN in the 19 North States and the Federal Capital Territory, addressed the issue during an interview on Channels Television's The Morning Brief. Rather than responding with another inflammatory statement, Hayab called for moderation and responsible public communication, particularly when religious leaders are discussing politics. According to the CAN chairman, the problem was not simply what Sheikh Yahaya expressed support for Muslim political candidates. Hayab said religious leaders have the right to encourage their followers to support candidates who share their faith or political convictions. But he argued that there is a line between political mobilization and language that insults or excludes other citizens.
Well, we have always been tolerant of this, and I want to take us back. We have had worse of this statement. We have gone through worse of this statement. If Jingir'S have experience, we have worse experience about these statements. So all of us, but we have to be moderate. We have to be careful when we come to public space. Honestly speaking, if Jingir'S has said, look, let's vote for our Muslim brothers to show we are strong, it would have been offensive than adding infidel. Well, that's what I want Professor to know. The moment he went out of just campaigning an insult, then it turns the story different. So justifying what he's still trying to find a soft landing for him cannot be an excuse. But we are saying this as Christians, that look, we've had this for a long time. We've suffered this for a long time. We are familiar with this for a long time. Even some people that we meet in those organizations you see we are doing and talking about dialogue, we know there are people who come not to dialogue with us as equal partners or as friends or as colleagues or as human beings. This part they will quote the Quran and tell us what it says. But we understand this. We will not stop the dialogue. We will talk with honest people, clerics. We will talk with people who understand things right. But we should also call out people like Jingir'S and others like the man in Katsina who wants to sack every Christian. We should be able to call them out. And when we call them out, government can now act responsibly to know that these people are creating bigger problem for her than uniting Nigeria. Nigeria needs unity. Nigeria needs togetherness. See, we have always fight this and people pretend. Let me put it straight to you. That's why we've called for every census. The religious question should be there. Let's settle this. Why have people been running away from putting religious questions on census and then come out behind the scene and beat their chest? It is not today that Nigeria had a Muslim ticket. We voted for Abiola and Kingibe. We didn't have problem with that. We've had a Buhari and Idiakum. Nobody had problem with that. Even during Gawon, he was president and the other person was a Christian. Nobody had problem with that. But when we start making terrible rhetorics against one another and start insulting people publicly as if, please, can we solve this problem once and for all? Let's have the religious question. Let's really know who is in this, what is the percentage, so that people will stop insulting fellow Nigerians. And government must wake up to show that in this country, you don't have the right to just speak every insult on people, hiding under politics or on religion.
And according to Hayab, that line was crossed when the controversial statement allegedly included the derogatory term infidel. He explained that if the cleric had simply encouraged Muslims to support their fellow Muslim politically, the statement would have been less offensive. But one insulting language entered the conversation. Hayab said the matter became much more serious. The Khan leader said, "We have always been tolerant of this," while recalling what he described as a long history of offensive religious statements. But he also stressed that tolerance should not be interpreted as permission for religious figures to make inflammatory comments without consequences. For Khan, the issue goes beyond one cleric. It touches on a much bigger question about how religion is being used in Nigeria's political conversation ahead of 2027. Nigeria is constitutionally a secular state with a population made up predominantly of Christians and Muslims, alongside followers of traditional and other faiths. That religious diversity has always made political language particularly sensitive. The controversy surrounding the Muslim ticket has already demonstrated just how quickly political debates can become religious debates. President Bola Tinubu and Vice President Kashim Shettima are both Muslims, making the 2023 presidential ticket a major subject of discussion before and after the election. Supporters of the arrangement have argued that competence, political experience, and the ability to govern should matter more than religious balancing. Critics, however, have argued that Nigeria's religious diversity requires political leaders to be sensitive to representation and inclusion. Now, as political parties and politicians begin positioning themselves for 2027, the religious dimension is returning to the center of national debate. Sheikh reported comments have therefore arrived at a politically sensitive moment. For some Muslims, the Muslim ticket represents political confidence and the right of voters to support candidates based on their belief and political preference. For many Christians, however, statements suggesting that Nigeria belongs to one religious group can sound like a direct challenge to the principle of equal citizenship. And that is precisely where Khan's response becomes significant. Joseph Hayab did not call for religious confrontation. Instead, he called for dialogue with open-minded individuals and clerics. He also acknowledged that Christians have experienced what he described as offensive statements over a long period. His argument was essentially that Nigeria cannot afford to continue responding to provocative religious rhetoric with even more provocative rhetoric. Because once political competition becomes a context between religious communities, the consequences can extend far beyond an election campaign. It can deepen mistrust, it can create fear, and it can make ordinary citizens view their fellow Nigerians through the lens of religious identity rather than shared citizenship. That is particularly dangerous in a country already dealing with insecurity, economic hardship, political distrust, and social divisions. The 2027 election will inevitably produce heated debates over who should govern Nigeria. Candidates will appeal to different religions, ethnic groups, religious communities, and political constituencies. But the question is whether those campaigns will focus on policies and performance, or whether religion will become the primary weapon. Khan's latest intervention suggests that Christian leaders are watching that development closely. Hayab's message is also a warning to political and religious figures on both sides of the divide. Political mobilization is part of democracy. Religious identity is also a legitimate part of personal belief. But neither should become an excuse for declaring that one group owns Nigeria while another group does not belong. Nigeria belongs to all its citizens. That principle becomes even more important as the country moves towards another highly contested presidential election. The controversy surrounding Sheikh Yahaya's remarks may eventually disappear from the headlines. But the question it has raised will remain. Can Nigeria conduct a fiercely competitive 2027 election without turning political disagreement into religious confrontation? Can Muslim and Christian leaders mobilize their supporters without demonizing the other side? And can politicians convince Nigerians to vote based on competence, policies, and performance rather than fear and religious identity? Those questions will become increasingly important as 2027 approaches. For Khan, the immediate answer is moderation. For Nigerian citizens, the challenge is to remain vigilant, demand responsible leadership, and reject rhetoric that attempts to divide the country along religious lines. Because elections come and go, governments change, political alliances collapse, and new ones emerge. But Nigeria remains home to everyone who calls the country their own. And as the 2027 political battle begins to take shape, the words used by those seeking to influence millions of Nigerians may matter almost as much as the policies they promise to implement. What do you think about Khan's response to Sheikh Yahaya's remarks? Should religious leaders be free to openly campaign for candidates from their faith? Or should there be a stronger limit on statements that could deepen religious divisions? Share your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe to the channel for more major political and national developments, and share this report with others who should be part of the conversation. I am Cassie Tuni. Many thanks for watching.